Cool. Let's go ahead and dive right on into it then. What do you think?
Perfect. Let's do it. Well, Jim, all right. So, welcome, Rose and Lisa. Excited to have you both here. Y'all are taking advantage of some free coaching here, so I'm glad that you guys were able to show up. And we're going to be getting into a little bit of how to build a brand that attracts high level clients, that attracts premium clients, because one of the biggest things that we see in the coaching space, both of you probably are aware of the fact that we work with coaches only with our business. So we've had a lot of time in the industry. We've been able to see a lot of the kind of little problems and mistakes that are being made along the way in order to really get those clients that you are looking for. And a lot of this comes down to truly building a brand with your coaching business, right? As coaches, we're great at what we do and we know that we can help people, but 9 times out of 10, the translation of you knowing what you do onto somebody else is where there's a disconnect, right? So with building a brand, what we're going to talk about today is about really the effective messaging behind a brand, how to truly build a brand that attracts these high level clients. And just like we have from you guys right now, like the big question to ask yourself is, if you received a message from you, or if you saw a piece of your content, whatever the case may be, would you buy from you currently, right? Because we know that we're good people. We know that we come from with good intentions and that we can serve a lot of individuals and create transformation. But when we're online, when we're in the digital space, a lot of what happens is these prospects or these people that you're trying to attract are just seeing you at face value, right? Odds are they're probably, unfortunately, judging off of social media and the way that you're portraying yourself on the platform in order to see if you're a potential coach that they want to work with. That's how the world works nowadays. It's like people see a Facebook page, people see an Instagram page, and they draw conclusions, right? So we're going to be walking through a couple of the pieces that are important when it comes to these different platforms in order to really create that brand that attracts those clients.
Boom. Nailed it, man. Took the words right out of my mouth. Couldn't say it any better. But cool. Yeah, no, let's just dive right on into it. What I did here is I kind of like just ripped Mike's profile actually, and just kind of broke down, some of the quality pieces that I would say makes his profile attractive. And keep in mind, like that's the biggest thing that we're trying to accomplish here is like just make it to a point to go back to this question. If you message you, would you buy from you? And the biggest thing is you have to have like that appeal online to even like have people interested in your message. So one of the biggest things that ties into is credibility. Social credibility is huge in 2021, and it'll be huge for forever. But obviously, like followers is a great thing, but the biggest thing is like the tribe behind your name. Like the people that are interested in your stuff and are willing to be like, hey, like this guy knows what he's talking about, type of thing. Like I'm interested in his stuff, because of the topic that he speaks about, type of thing. Now, credibility can also go into like press as well, like PR, branding, in that nature. But the biggest two ways are like, online features, whether it's like an online newswire or an online magazine, and, just like follower growth, like gains when it comes to that. Which both of those we can help you guys with. If you're interested, just, reach out to us directly and we can talk about that. But the other thing that I want to go into is like the quality avatar. Like if you look at my profile, it's at Mike Pugliese. I didn't put it up here, but Mike's, it's his face, smiling. It's very welcoming type of thing. Mine, if you look at mine, it's like a picture of me and my girlfriend. Like, we're on a vacation. It's like a little bit of me, but it's very welcoming. It's like shows that like, hey, I'm a real human type of thing. So with those two things, like credibility and the avatar, like that's a first impression type of thing. Now you go into like the name, like the name and the bio type of thing. How I have it listed here, like just cut to the chase, get straight to the point. Make what your profile looks like attractive, and where it's like something that is like eye catching, but at the same time like can make somebody laugh or something like that. Like Mike's is perfect here. Mindset and business coach, sure. Like that's interesting, huh? I might be able to find something from him. But then I look at his profile, his bio, and it's I help men and women remove money blocks and sell online coaching programs like toilet paper during the pandemic. Like that's like something that will have you laughing, So it at the same time, it's very straight to the point, cutting to the chase as to what Mike and I do, but it'll give you a good laugh at the same time. So and then attached to that, there's a direct call to action. Like if this piques your interest type of thing, like DM me for more info, for details. And he's got his website there that's just basic Linktree type of setup, where it's just like key like tools that Mike would recommend. So that's like very basic, like first impression standpoint of a profile. And then obviously going into like results, something that proves like, hey, not only does this guy mention that he does X, Y, and Z, and like this is where I can get more information, but here's exactly where I can see past results from clients, actual like real transformations, whether it's an A to Z type of like transformation, or it's a very simple just like screenshot of something that a client said or something like that. And then lastly, like on the profile side, like the eye-catching content is definitely key. Mike is like very good with this type of stuff, like where it's just kind of following trends. It's like seeing what other people are doing, what's working for them, but at the same time making your own spin of it and making it related to what you actually do. But Mike, do you have anything that you would like to add as far as like the profile side?
Yeah, sure. I really want to put like a heavy emphasis on content, because I think that in the coaching industry, it's extremely important as you step into coaching to be very active with content, primarily because, you're coming from a place of I have like information that you currently need access to, right? So when you're coming from that type of place, it's important to understand that people are skeptical on the internet. We all know that. That's why likely you guys might be having trouble like booking calls or getting clients, is because people are extremely skeptical on the internet, and they want to make sure that you're somebody that has credibility and that can prove that they can help them even before jumping on a phone call. So a lot of the reason why, what we've seen in the past with certain coaches that we've worked with, a lot of the reason why they've struggled to get over the barrier of booking their first few calls or getting their first few clients is the simple fact that if you go to their Instagram page or their Facebook page, there's no videos of them talking about their expertise and talking about topics that they have a lot of knowledge in. There's no like vulnerability, right? That's a huge piece too. Those two things are super important. When it comes to content, number one is showing the fact that you know what you're talking about in your specific field. They're not going to know you know what you're talking about unless there's content that shows that you do, right? The first thing somebody's going to do when they come across your page is look at your content. And if they jive with you, if they vibe with the content, they think that you're a cool individual, whatever, like, or they think you have value, then they're going to answer you or they're going to be interested. But if they come across your page and they just see some like generic, maybe family photos or just photos of, like quotes or something like that, it's just not going to catch the way that you want it to. They have to be able to be indoctrinated by your content. When they watch your content, they get pieces of value. They start to understand who you are and what your personality type is. And then that's what draws them to have the curiosity to want to learn more, right? But the one piece I really want to touch on with content here is vulnerability. The most successful people that you see on the internet with content, the reason why they're so successful is because they get extremely vulnerable with their content. And you don't have to air out your dirty laundry. You don't have to like tell all of the stuff that has ever affected you or anything like that. But if you're a life coach, a mindset coach, if you help like anxiety or any of these sorts of topics that are vulnerable topics, it's important that you're showing that you have the confidence and certainty to speak about your own past troubles. Because it's likely that if you're a coach who is a life coach or spiritual coach, or you help people with anxiety, it's probably because you've been through your own transformation in order to get to where you are. if you're not opening up about that transformation, and if you're not telling your story, then people aren't even going to know that you've ever done this, right? So if I come across, let's say I come across a Facebook page and I come and there's just some pictures of some family and everything looks happy and everything looks like extremely, for a lack of a better word, like a highlight reel, right? If a Facebook page just looks like a highlight reel of all happy pictures and, family and all this and that, all that, if I'm somebody who has anxiety or I'm depressed and I come across your page, I'm not going to make the connection that you understand where I'm at. I'm going to think like, how does this person know what it feels like to be depressed if they look so happy and they look like this, right? So I'm going to start to think, how does this person know the things that I need to know? If there are I understand the fact that that happiness is something that they desire, have a little bit of pull to it, but the vulnerability is what gets them to understand that you've been where they are and you can help them get out of where they're at. And that's the most important piece, is the vulnerability when it comes to content. So it's important to educate and show that you have knowledge, but it's also important to have the vulnerability to talk about what you've been through and show people that you can help them escape. And really what that looks like is being vulnerable about that piece of in that piece of content of your story, but then transitioning it into how were you able to escape that? What were the items that you can provide them that help them to get out of that state? So that's something I just wanted to jump on and jam on with content, because I see a lot of people who they'll post content, but it's not effective content. And the reason why it's not effective is because, just like Mike said, they're not doing the research to understand what's going on in content creation, and they're not getting vulnerable enough about certain things that they've been through in their life. If you go to my Instagram, you'll be able to see that there's some videos that I talk about some moments that were troubling for me. I had friends pass away, a few things, and I've had reels that I've posted on these topics because I know that people will understand and resonate with that story. Even if they haven't been through the same thing, they'll feel the pain of that piece of content to understand that I'm a real person with real things that's happened, instead of just looking at me as this person that's on a pedestal. So it's important to have that human aspect to your content.
Yeah, and I mean, even just think about some of the bigger people that you follow too, the Grant Cardones, the Andy Frisellas, I don't know if you guys follow those types of people, but the bigger motivational speakers, coaches, this is what they do. They're vulnerable, when they speak, and they're relatable. That's the biggest thing. But a couple of things that I ask myself, when thinking about creating content is, I like this X because it led to Y transformation for Z. It's these types of things where it's I like this because it led to this for me. It helped me out with this type of thing. This book opened this up for me. And that'll allow you to create content about things that you don't necessarily own as well. It could be books, podcasts, other things like that. But moving on into kind of that content flow, what kind of should you be doing to create content? This is something that we ripped from somebody else that we follow, Bradley, actually. He shared this on a call, and this it just kind of simplified everything for us, or at least in my eyes. And it's pretty much coming into number one, what is your source of content? The going to what Mike is talking about, it's really you being you. So think about how you can create content being yourself, whether it's podcasts that you do or recording coaching calls. I put a note here, get a tripod and keep it with you everywhere. Put it up in your kitchen, while you're cooking dinner. There's all different times where we think about topics that really should be shared, but it's just something in our head, and it's all right, I'll do this on Monday type of thing. I'll record a piece of content on Monday type of thing. But in reality, that's what people want to see. People want to see you being you, but at the same time, if you can tie a little nugget into it, then amazing. So think about the different sources of or the different ways that you can create content, which would be number one, your source. And like I said, the best piece of content that you can create is stuff, you being you. Number two, it's like diving into like the creatives, like get the ums, the ahs, like edit the videos, to where it flows, throw a nice headline on it, subtitle it, make it attractive. You want something that like is going to stop somebody, like where they're scrolling along and they're like, oh wait, what is Lisa doing? What is Rose doing? Like, what are they doing right now? Oh wait, they're talking about something that I resonate with, that I like, like cool. And so like that's the goal. It has to be something that has like an eye catching, like number one, like kind of image to it, or like a background, a video, but at the same time like a headline. Like make sure that headline stops somebody too, because if it's a video, think about like what you do. You scroll through, you stop at the video, you likely don't turn on the sound, you look at the headline, oh okay, this is about sales, this is about coaching, this is about X, Y, and Z. Now let me turn on the audio and actually see what's happening here. So that would be number two, like your creative, like headlines that stop people, make it like flow together. Number three, like where is it going? Like you want to be able to, you want to have like an omni-channel presence when it comes to social media. It's very easy to repurpose content nowadays. You can create something for TikTok, you can post it on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, and vice versa. You can create a long-winded YouTube video, break it down into short TikToks, multiple TikToks, multiple Instagram reels. You can type up the words and create it into like a Twitter thread. There's multiple different ways that you can like repurpose one basic, piece of content. And then going into like the frequency, like how many times should you be posting across these platforms? So this is, obviously something that Brad shared with us. I'm, to be honest, am guilty of not, obeying these frequencies myself, but this is what he recommends, for the best like increase in reach. And he actually showed some numbers behind this in how like he was using, this kind of strategy versus like a once a day strategy in the past. And he had like direct numbers, showing that he had like a 2 million increase in reach, when it comes to, the people that he was reaching across all of his social media platforms. So 2 times a day on Instagram. I put in here like 15 to 20 times a day on Twitter, just because that's something that we got from somebody else that had like crazy growth on Twitter. Brad only says like 1 to 2 times, but he's also talking about like valuable threads. Whereas, 15 times per day is just like little quotes, little motivational things. It could be a mantra, it could be sharing a book. Like there's lots of things that, like I said, we think about or we say to somebody that you could easily just copy it and post it as a tweet and get it out to, social media that way. LinkedIn, 1 times per day, YouTube 3 times per week, TikTok 3 times per day, Facebook 2 times per day. And then Clubhouse, if you're not familiar with Clubhouse, really cool platform, but he recommends like 30 minutes per day there. And so that's pretty much like your frequency, like the amount of times that you're going to want to be posting on these platforms per day, per week type of thing, just to increase your reach as much as possible. And then lastly, like boost, like how much money did you put behind it? Are you putting your time behind it by actually, using the engagement strategies like the 3-2-1 method to get in front of people and increase your reach that way? Or are you actually boosting posts or using other ways to drive traffic to your profiles to increase that reach? So there we have it. That's pretty much the content flow that is recommended as far as like how you can actually like, number one, source it, create it, the proper outlets that you should be posting it on, how frequent, and things that you can do to get some extra attraction behind it. But Mike, do you have anything to add on to this here?
Yeah, so I think one of the things to think about is like, probably as you're hearing this, it's pretty overwhelming to know like how much content that goes into like really building an effective brand or a consistent brand that's getting in front of eyes. But understand the fact that like this is a huge piece of the puzzle. But if you can master step 1 of this, which is the source, and making it one that's like effortless, that's going to put you in a spot where you're going to be able to be consistent with content. One of the biggest things that we've done is Mike and I have a podcast. So what we do is we take our podcast and we export it, and then we have a video editor edit the podcast into video clips for social media. So instead of us spending, a couple hours a week creating content, we're able to record one 30-minute podcast and get, 10 different pieces of content out of that one podcast. So what I recommend, and, if this is something you're serious about, take a quick note of this website I'm about to mention. But if you go to Fiverr.com, which is like 5, but with 2 R's at the end, Fiverr.com, that website is a website where you can hire freelancers who are video editors or graphic designers. And you can do exactly what Mike and I, or what I'm referring to, right? Maybe you start a podcast and you spend 30 minutes recording a podcast episode once a week, and you take that podcast and you give it to somebody on Fiverr to edit a few video clips. And it's going to cost you some money, but you're not going to have to spend all your time learning how to edit videos and stuff like that. At the end of the day, we know that you guys are coaches. You don't want to spend all day learning how to do all this other stuff. So it's important to leverage your time and to use money to buy back your time. So, spending $50 or $60 or $100 on a podcast episode to cut it up into different pieces of social media content is going to be really what it takes for you to not have to be a slave to recording content, right? Because that's the thing, is like when you start recording content on a consistent basis, it can be pretty daunting, and it's tough to like just flip the switch and be in content mode 24/7. So I really highly encourage you to do something like a podcast, record your coaching calls, and then utilize those recordings to pass off to somebody on Fiverr who can edit them, because that's going to be really the biggest way for you to be consistent. And then, you can set up a camera once a week for an hour or two and just start dropping value. And then you can take those video clips and hire somebody on Fiverr to make those into social media clips. So, that amount of content from a visual perspective of looking at how many times you have to post per day, it looks pretty daunting, but in reality, you can get this consistent on social media with like 2 to 3 hours of your time per week. It's just front loading all that work and then having somebody on the back end who's going to edit it. So that's why I recommend Fiverr.com, because you can find like a video editor to hire for cheap to edit those videos.
Boom. Think there's a lot of nuggets there.
Yeah. Perfect. So we'll stick around for